Okay, Bitcoin continues to have bearish momentum. Here we have the bearish reversal of conditions still very much in play from December 17th. That is 2 weeks ago from our current trading session, which is the last trading day of the year on December 31st. We just started the session, but we've had a bearish reversal of conditions here. You've got red bars, you've got a red cloud, you've got that red arrow again showing the cloud flipped. Bitcoin sold off and it rallied back up and it got rejection at the 20 period. That's a blue line here. The 10 has crossed the 20 period, and again, Bitcoin is just hovering at key horizontal support. But things are bearish here, and we've seen diversions play out here on indicators on the Awesome Oscillator, the MACD, and others like the RSI. That is the daily chart for Bitcoin. Let me just show you the weekly. We're getting these red bars, and it's what I'm watching is to see if we attempt to recover, or do we go lower and then attempt to recover here in the weekly time frame. And if we do we end up going up to that upper channel line still? I think there's a very good shot that is likely going to be the case in January, that we make a new all-time high, and that could take Bitcoin to 120 to 125,000, reaching that upper channel line. It was at a lower target. And here's the channel. Now, it was at a lower target level. I talked about the 115,000 area, give or take, if we reached it immediately. But we've been going, we had this diversion, so we've been going down for a couple weeks here, and we kind of went sideways for about 7 weeks now. And again, I think that we'll likely reach this upper channel in the month of January, or, sell off if we get a bigger sell off. Then again, something like that. But I think that we got a pretty good shot of still reaching this upper channel level. The channel was very, very important in the downtrend here, and again, I think it's very important in the uptrend. So again, breakout here, weekly signals all began to turn back to bullish. Momentum in the weekly time frame turned back to bullish before that. And again, I think as long as the weekly signals can remain bullish, this is where I think we're likely headed. Now again, we reach it in January, then you're looking at 120 to 125,000, which again I think is very, very doable for Bitcoin. And I think it is going to complete a blow off top. Recession, I think, will start in the first or second quarter, and Bitcoin will begin to price that in. And again, Bitcoin has never been in existence when we've gone through a legitimate recession with a bear market with the stock market. It's never happened before. Bitcoin has had bear markets, but it's only had one recession, and the Fed wouldn't let that play out. They threw everything in the kitchen sink at it in 2020. They enabled the government to pass out $6 trillion in stimulus checks. We had some volatility. Bitcoin dropped 71%, but it was already into starting the new bull market at that point, 2019 and on into 2020. And then we got the 2021 rally, pardon me. If I just zoom out, you can see all this, what I'm talking about right here. This is the 2021 rally. This is the 71% sell-off. This is the birth of the new bull market right here in 2019, and the corrective move in 2019 and on into 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if we went up and hit that upper channel if we can see momentum begin to shift. Now, again, let me repeat, if weekly signals all begin to turn back to bearish and we see some real evidence turning off the trend lines I've been talking about, then again, maybe that's all she wrote. I think this channel still in the log, with the log scaling here, the weekly time frame still has a very good chance of playing out. I warned you before the selling ever took place that we were going up and slamming in this trend line. I was talking about it before we reached it, that we would likely reach it and probably see a reaction off of it. And then the question is, can we get back above it, this trend line and the one with the log scaling, and move to that upper channel line longer term? I think that's likely going to be the case, but this could terminate the rally altogether. That is certainly possible if the weekly signals all begin to confirm that. Start taking out the 20-week moving average, and we start in the weekly time frame, start taking out the 100-day and the daily and staying below those levels, then you could have a reversal. It follows those moving averages. And this is a trend line from 2017 connected to the 2021 peaks, excluding the shadows here, including it here, and we turned right off of that level. So the question is, are we going to go back up and try to bust up through it? and you know, maybe get something like a larger divergence on the RSI in the weekly time frame, or does this trend line terminate the rally? So we're watching, but we did expect the signals to turn back to bearish and get a pullback. I told you we could get a pullback or reversal. You know, the jury is still out on which one it is. I told you I still think Bitcoin's likely going to make new highs, but I do think that after this big push higher, the breakout above overhead resistance, getting the breakout of the downward trend of the bull flag, parabolic. So there you have it. And again, watch the video all the way through. I'm going to be talking about MicroStrategy. I think that's really important. We turned off this trend line with the linear scaling with Bitcoin. By the way, for the week, Bitcoin right now is down 1.36%. We've been dropping for 3 weeks straight now. But Bitcoin is at horizontal support. It's at the 10-week moving average. So is the S&P 500. Interesting. And they both haven't reached their upper channel lines. But again, Bitcoin, it stalled up the trend line here from our 2021 low with the log scaling, excluding the shadows here, pointing right up to that area. We just tried to overthrow it, and we got rejection. So again, if we can bounce off the 10, or if we drop down to the 20, or the midpoint of the channel, can we attempt to rebound and go back up to this level? If we reach it in January, you're looking at 120 to 125,000. Again, the trend line's at the target, not some number. The trend line was at the 115,000 area, but we didn't reach it. Came close, but no cigar. And the further right you go to the chart, the higher the trend line goes, so the objective target increases. A number is not the target. The trend line is a target. This trend line was a target before we reached it. That was our first objective target. We reached that. We're getting a reaction. I talked about, do we get an overthrow of this level? We get rejection. And I told you we were hitting these trend lines as right before we hit them. I told you we were going to hit them when we did. I sent out a red alert video with the red alert and told you, again, we are likely going to get a pullback. We've had a smaller one now. Do we end up getting a bigger one? We'll be watching, but those are the trend lines we've been looking at. I told you 3 weeks ago we started to see distribution with that selling pressure that we had at those trend lines. If we can continue and resume the advance here or at lower levels and then resume it, again, this trend line then comes into play, but we are starting to see distribution. That doesn't mean we can't make new highs. And if I zoom out here a little bit, you can see I talked about this area over here, how we started getting distribution as we rallied higher. Eventually, it led to a 55% sell-off. But these signals have done a very good job of showing accumulation and distribution. And again, we're seeing distribution. We had a lot of distribution in here through the bull flag. Then the accumulation signal allowed for that breakout here in the weekly time frame. We saw momentum turn bullish and then the trend signals. So I still think we're likely going to rally there. But again, if everything turns back to bearish in the weekly time frame, then risk is that's all she wrote. My guess is that's probably not going to be the case. I think you'll see a rally. But then I think, again, in January, the risk is that the inflation ticks back up. January 15th will be, in 2.5 weeks, will be the CPI data. We'll get the PPI data right after that. And then you're going to have, less than 3 weeks from right now, you'll have Inauguration Day. And that very well could be a sell the news event. I think something even more could impact Bitcoin, and that could be the bubble with MicroStrategy. And again, I think I've been watching. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. Follow the link. It'll take you to a secured site, and you can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Consider partnering with me and helping out. I thank you for your consideration for that. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I might post a video on New Year's Day. Might want to check back for that. If I don't, if I don't end up doing it, then I'll be posting one the day after New Year's. So be watching. I post one on New Year's Day, so keep that in mind. Video all the way through, and you'll see some of these swing signals and what they're doing right now, like this chart right here. Now, MicroStrategy is back at 300. We closed at 302. We had the low today at 301 and 75 cents. We were down 8.19%. And again, Bitcoin is flirting and dropping below the 50 period. So is MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy in the daily time frame is in a total bubble. be very problematic for Bitcoin going forward. I think that MicroStrategy is going to get another run up in January, and I think it's going to come back up to this upper channel line, and I think it'll form a divergence here on the RSI. I think we're going to end up seeing it turn back up. Maybe it gets a bigger sell-off, but I think it'll end up turning back up at some point, and I think you'll see it likely get a new high and form a divergence, as we had a divergence back over here and back over here. These other peaks along the way have formed divergences, and this massive one back over here, which was a multiple point divergence for MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy has huge exposure to Bitcoin, and again, could eventually create a problem for Bitcoin if we see the MicroStrategy bubble. Now, MicroStrategy just cut on the NASDAQ 100 too. So again, MicroStrategy, along with NVIDIA, could be the forces that pull down the stock market and Bitcoin simultaneously. The thing that links them together in the chain is MicroStrategy. It's kind of interesting. Already seen days where the NASDAQ has a lot of volatility, rounding volatility with MicroStrategy, and where we've had updates with NVIDIA. So it's interesting. NASDAQ 100 followed NVIDIA religiously, and now it's kind of hit and miss. It's very interesting what is going on, and I think a divergence. I think we could see the RSI come back up here. I think we could see price come back up here, and they could diverge and complete a top in January. I think that is very, very likely. Here it is up close. Now, like I said, if Bitcoin doesn't make new highs, if it stops making new highs, and it can't, and we begin to see the weekly signals turn bearish, and we start losing the 20-week moving average, we start losing the 100-day moving average, well, then that would be extremely bearish for Bitcoin. But I think it's pulling back, and I think MicroStrategy is pulling back here, and I think it's eventually going to come up here. And again, huge, wild swings with the run-up from August here. So I think this divergence scenario could play out. We still have the 50 above the 200 period. The price is dropping below 50, so there still could be a bigger pullback, a bigger sell-off. But again, and we have this gap fill down here. So again, that's still possible. Seeing a pretty good drop with MicroStrategy. We get one final climax high to complete the blow off top, or is it done over here? I think you still got a shot that this diversion scenario plays out. We don't have one yet on the RSI, and I think you could very well see one form in the MACD if it tries to firm up here, or if we go down into negative territory a little bit here as we're already in there, and then firm up and turn back up. But again, I'm going to be watching MicroStrategy very closely and give you some of my thoughts about it. Now, in blue is Bitcoin. The green circles are the purchases for MicroStrategy. And right now, they are going to town. Well, Sailor just announced that they'll be doing even more. But they are getting very, very aggressive up here with their buying. And again, this is the average price. You see this little dotted line? That's at 62,000 and some change, 62,500 or something like that. And getting very aggressive up here now. So again, the average price is now sharply rising. If Bitcoin tops out either at the trend line we just reached or the trend line just overhead at about 120, 125,000, if we finish a blow off top there, it doesn't go up to 100, 80, 100, 250, 300,000 like everybody's saying it's going to, and we end up having a recession, then MicroStrategy could be in a world of hurt. And again, MicroStrategy is in a bubble. And if it pops, it could really put some pressure on Bitcoin. And I think that is going to be the issues going forward, that a MicroStrategy could be a drag on the NASDAQ, and it could be a drag Bitcoin. Bitcoin starts collapsing, it will be a drag on MicroStrategy. So again, which came first, the chicken or the egg, MicroStrategy will impact Bitcoin, Bitcoin will impact MicroStrategy. But something worth paying attention to, if we start losing the 62,000 area on Bitcoin, MicroStrategy could get into some serious trouble. Or if we have a recession, both MicroStrategy, the stock market, MicroStrategy and Bitcoin will price it in, but the stock market will as well. By the way, we're going to have a recession. The narrative is everybody dismisses that. From Larry Fink, he's dismissing it. He's saying, nah, all the experts on the financial channels and social media, everybody's saying the herd, nah, we're not going to have a recession. And then the Fed just said at the last Fed meeting we had just the other day, in our December meeting, Powell has said that we have successfully avoided a recession. Not true. We're going to have one. It's just Powell dismisses in the recession indicators. He's too busy looking at inflation, which when he should be focusing on the recession and the same monetary policy mistake that they made back in 2007. So this could be a problem. I wrote about MicroStrategy and posted a few charts on MicroStrategy and Coin today on my X account, which was formerly Twitter. Go read it. I'm just going to run it here real fast. I'm at Charting Prodigy. I go look at those charts that I posted, and I posted a Bitcoin chart with it. But I just talked about MicroStrategy's bubble bursting and getting a crash. Could that end the Bitcoin bull run that we're having happen in 2025? And again, it's likely that MicroStrategy is going to get one more push higher, and so I think will Bitcoin as well. I talked about a moment ago Bitcoin's MicroStrategy's average price for Bitcoin at $62,428. Drop below that level could be problematic because of the massive exposure that MicroStrategy is getting into right here at the highs, buying Bitcoin at nosebleed levels, and if it does go down, they could have problems. Actually, if a recession starts in quarter one or quarter two, as I believe it will, and my recession indicators are saying it's going to be starting in the not too distant future. I believe the recession indicators. Just wrote the bursting of the MicroStrategy bubble coupled with a recession could end up really harming MicroStrategy and creating a massive crash with Bitcoin. That could be a drag on Bitcoin. Could be we see that being one of the reasons the next Bitcoin bearish phase. I think Bitcoin's likely going to go to 120 to 125,000 before all is said and done, and got a good shot of a top there at that channel that I've been talking about. But wanted to talk about that just briefly, that MicroStrategy and all that they're doing could eventually be a ticking time bomb for Bitcoin. If the MicroStrategy bubble begins to pop, here's the problem. Okay, like Bitcoin right now, we've come back to the support area. We've seen a drop now. We saw initially a drop of 15%. Now we dropped a little bit lower with the Monday session, and we've dropped 15.70% since the high on December 17th. And we got that toppy tail in the gravestone doji, and it was a confirmed reversal. You got a possible head and shoulders right now. If we end up breaking down, we could see a big drop with Bitcoin. We got rejection at the 20 period, which is the blue line right there. We broke below the blue line, and then we went back up to it, and the 10 dropped below the 20, and now we're below the 50. So the 10 is dropping below the 50, the green line. If the 20 does, you have a bearish alignment of the moving averages. If you lose this area, you can get a bigger drop with Bitcoin. But we're watching to see what happens with that. But notice Bitcoin has lost 15% since the December 17th, I think it was December 17th, yes, December 17th peak. So here's the problem. Since we've had, and it's already starting to happen, say this, Bitcoin's lost nearly 16% since the December 17th peak, since the peak right at that same time, the day before with MicroStrategy has lost much more. Double that. And by the way, when people try to exposure through Bitcoin through buying MicroStrategy, they end up paying a premium. It's better just to buy Bitcoin directly. But Bitcoin lost 0.70 or whatever it was percent, almost 16%, whereas we've lost double that here, nearly double that here on the lower high that's set up right here for MicroStrategy. We've lost 31%. It made a lower high. Bitcoin made a higher high. They diverged. Now, MicroStrategy still may attempt a recovery, but again, it did peak back over here in November 24th, and that is the same time that we saw NVIDIA peak. Again, as another asset with a lot of volatility. Since we peaked over here in November, late November, we've lost 44.5% from today's low. We dropped another today, 8%, 8.19% today with the Monday session. MicroStrategy has now lost 44.5% from its peak. Coin is just down 15.70 or so, something like that. But the problem is that MicroStrategy is in a bubble. It could be bursting. We still could get one more final climax high. This possibly could be it, though. But there's still a strong possibility you get a divergence on that RSI that I've talked about in the daily time frame. But here from the August low, Bitcoin has risen from the August low over here to the high. It's risen by 429, almost 429.5% for MicroStrategy. Did I say Bitcoin? If I said Bitcoin, MicroStrategy. But we'll see what happens. It's testing the 50 period. Bitcoin's testing the 50 period. The point is that MicroStrategy is in a bubble, and when it pops, and that could be right now, or we might buy a little bit more time if we go try to form that divergence and we get one more push back up here. But if we see the bubble burst here, or we get one more push higher, and then we begin to see the bubble begin to burst, that could be very problematic for Bitcoin going forward. Just this year, MicroStrategy is up 800 and almost 844% just since January, the beginning of January of 2024 until right now. So 844% from the 2022 low over here. This entire move to this peak right here, it's up nearly 4,000%, 3,972%. It's in a bubble that is peaked right here, or we get one more push higher. We'll see. I think you get one more push higher, but MicroStrategy is clearly in a bubble. And if it begins to pop, that could be really bad news for Bitcoin, or coin tops could be very problematic for MicroStrategy. Just something worth paying attention to as we go into 2025 and as we move closer towards recession. MicroStrategy is not going to, their stock is not going to dodge the recession. Neither is Bitcoin and neither is the NASDAQ. We're going to have it, and it's going to be showing up in the first or second quarter in all likelihood. Signals are warning that we're about to see it happen. A lot of signals that are pointing to recession right now. Could this be the downfall of Bitcoin as we start seeing the bubble burst with MicroStrategy, and maybe we're starting to witness that now? Maybe we buy a little bit more time. My guess is that we're going to form the divergence, but it's still possible that the peak we had in November is a top, but I think you could still get a big push higher in January to exceed that level, form a divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame. Pay attention to MicroStrategy. This could be a huge issue in 2025 if this bubble begins to burst with MicroStrategy. Just like if we saw the AI bubble begin to burst. I've talked about the trend line. If you watch my stock videos, you know I talk about NVIDIA all the time. NVIDIA, if it takes out that trend line, the longer term channel, it'll terminate the bull market for NVIDIA. I think it'll terminate the bull market for the stock market, and I think it will terminate the bull market for the AI stocks. Food for thought as we go into 2025. Again, I'm watching this area of Bitcoin very closely. If we begin to lose this area, then Bitcoin could get a bigger dump, and it is possible we have a head and shoulders, as I said, completed here. And again, light trading volume this week. We'll have stock market with a partial day on New Year's Eve, and then on closed on New Year's Day. Bitcoin back tested this trend line, broke the 100, back tested this trend line, and went down. This is the channel, perfectly parallel channel. And so this is resistance. The 20 period is resistance. Again, we got to get back above that 20 period moving average here to turn things around. If we lose the 50 area there, the 20 drops below it, then there's risk of Bitcoin again getting a bigger dump here, price dragging the 100 period down on through that level. So just some things to be aware of. I think Bitcoin will likely reach this upper boundary of the channel. Again, we still may get a bigger pullback before that happens. We'll be watching. And if we fail to do that, those trend lines I've been talking about that we are turning off of currently could act as resistance to form a top, certainly possible. Coin is testing the levels of support. I talked about the 3 tiers of support here that we're testing, and the VWAP support right here. The VWAP support from the breakout point, the breakout here, and the higher low that's set up right there. We're testing that VWAP support right now. If we lose the blue area here, this blue shaded area, this 3-tier support area that is acting as support right now, then the risk as we go down further could come down as low as this level, could come down the 100 period moving average in the daily time frame, or the 20-week and the weekly, getting a bigger sell-off, not seen here on these charts. You know, I'm a big believer in that 100 period moving average. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. Again, Bitcoin is testing horizontal support right now, and if that level breaks, we could see a head and shoulders play out, give us a bigger drop to the 100 or the 200 period moving average. Could try to bounce here if we could see will start to change, but we've had this divergence with Bitcoin on indicators, like with the price oscillator here. And again, if it firms up here in negative territory, then Bitcoin can rebound, or if it breaches this level and we get a fake out move and we rebound back up. But the risk is that we end up dropping all the way down to the 100 or 200, and not a whole lot of support in this area where we kind of had that parabolic rise. So again, it's the risk. So we could turn back up and end up forming like a larger divergence and going on up into that next tier of resistance, 120, 125,000 area. If we can clear the resistance directly overhead from mid-December there. But the risk is that we get a bigger drop here. Again, got to be able to get back above this resistance area. This is the 99,500 area, this lower high that's set up, 99,550 to be exact. And now we're turning red here with momentum, dropping below this area, getting rejection at it, and the risk is that we keep going. Head and shoulders does in fact play out. So we'll be watching to see what happens. Do we start seeing a lot of selling going into the new year, or do we rebound and get another push higher? We'll be watching to see what happens. Now, again, I've talked about the price oscillator. When we saw Bitcoin get the higher low at 52,000, and we began to rise back up above the red line there, it flipped back to blue. We got back above the 100. And when we got back above the 100, the price oscillator and the MACD, they went positive. And now they're going negative. Bulls need to step up to the plate at support and turn this back up. The bears need a push below this area for a bigger drop to the 100 or the 200 period moving average. So again, going negative, losing support. If we stay below the 50, stay below this level here, which is now turning red, there's risk of a bigger drop for Bitcoin. The signal's bearish right now as far as a trend. We got above that 100 period, and again, we pull back to it. I talked about that. We tested it here. We tested it here. And that price oscillator has been in positive territory. So now it's going negative, and we're losing this area of support. So we could be on our way back to test that 100 period moving average if this stays negative. Signal swing move right now is bearish here in the daily time frame. Here's Bitcoin at support. Again, the resistance 99,550. Again, the price oscillator, MACD, both going into the negative region now after being positive, getting above that 100 period moving average. So again, we could be moving back to test 100 if these signals remain bearish. If they start turning back to bullish, we bounce off support, then we could complete a pullback just under 16% or so. But again, here's the problem as well in the daily time frame. Momentum here is negative. The RSI is negative. Again, notice the RSI got into positive territory when we bounced off that 100 period. We dipped slightly into negative territory after, when we first got above it over here, we saw the RSI turn up just before we got above it. We got above it. RSI stayed positive. It stayed positive above the 100. And this was the pullback right here. So it's been consistently, the RSI has been consistently in the positive region up until now. So again, that's the problem. And again, losing support, horizontal support right here could give Bitcoin a bigger drop, that blue line you're seeing right there. Bulls need to have the RSI go back above 50, momentum go back above 50, the price oscillator, the MACD all go back into positive territory in order to turn this around right here and right now. So again, just something worth paying attention to. It has to be able to clear 99,550 in order to turn this around. If we drop down to the 100, that's at the 82,500 area right now. Right here as well, look at this. Bitcoin, we got that higher low at 52,000, above 49,000 right there. Okay, we rose back into the positive portion of the cloud, and it was confirmed. We went into positive territory, and we were there consistently positive through the run-up. We formed a bearish divergence here, and right at the peak there, and moved into the bearish portion of the cloud after a reversal, and that was validated. And the rally back up, we stalled right there, get back into the positive portion of the cloud, and then dropped right back into the negative region, and did so here as well. So again, we have to see, in order to turn things around, see a big rally back up that will push this back into positive territory. If it goes, remains in negative territory, the risk is we get a bigger drop before it goes into positive territory. But it's got to go into positive territory, and then we got to get back up here into the positive region of the cloud. But did a great job of marking the swing move, and when it reversed right there, and again, notice the 52,000 area, we got up here and we bounced, and then we bounced, and then we bounced, and then we bounced, and then we bounced. And again, been consistently in the positive region, except for a breach, slight breach right there, and a slight breach right there. And then now we've had a breaking into the negative region here and into the bearish portion of the cloud. So this signal is still bearish. In order to turn things around, we've got to see things flip back to bullish here in the daily time frame for these swing signals.